What's up, daywalkers and night stalkers? It's me, your twisted southern horror queen, coming to you live from under full moon right here in southeastern Louisiana. Glad to have all you creepy kids jumping on board tonight, because as usual, I got all kind of crazy madness to spin for you guys. You know where all the great urban legends and haunted history come from, right? They come from right here. Hey, Wayla, good to see you, my girl. How's everybody doing? Hope everybody's doing good over there. There's Ronnie and Lori Owens, too, from Katy, Texas. Glad to see you guys jumping on board. And there is one of my favorite creepy kids, Lawrence Bim from the Crescent City. The boy is near and dear to my heart. So glad to have y'all on board. Like I said, got to start out real quick with those little shout outs for the Adrian's Fury Dragster, and that would be Renegade Racing Fuel, D&M Graphics, Surreal Studios, K&N Filters, Racers Direct, and of course Naked Wines, and there's a whole bunch more in there as well. Oh, Big Johnny Blender's downstairs going, free dogs tonight. Yes, we have those. Need a puppy? We have those. We'll ship, we'll deliver. Just let me know. Also, got to talk to you guys about the Creepy Crate. I don't know if you've checked it out yet or not. It's really easy to do that. Go to authorlyngibson.com. Right there on the home page in the right top corner, you will see a icon for the Creepy Crate. Click on that. I think those guys have some stuff lined up where you can see what was in some of the past shipments and what may be coming in some of the future shipments. There's my boy Gavin and Susie Jones. Hello, sweetheart. Miss you. Hope everything's going well. Gavin, I'm glad you're joining in right here at the beginning of the show. We were just talking about the Creepy Crate. These folks from the lineup go all over the place, and they dig around in some really dark and dusty and dank and scary places to find the best horror memorabilia for creepy kids like us. There's all kind of stuff up here in the Girl Cave that has come from my Creepy Crate, which ships every other month. The poor little mail lady shows up with holy water and prayer beads when she drops my crate in the mailbox. She said she doesn't want to know what's in the Creepy Crate, but I know you guys do. And I have a few little things sitting here beside me that I want to share with you. They're just some pieces, parts from some of my past crates, just to show you some of the cool stuff that's in them. Right here is my Camp Crystal Lake visor. Can you guys see that? Yeah, I wear it every once in a while. Got to let the neighbors know that normal don't happen here at the Gibson compound. Also, let's see, what else do I have sitting right here beside me? Oh, some serial killer pins. We've talked about both these guys. As a matter of fact, we talked about H.H. Holmes last week on the show, and this chick right here, that's Belle Gunnis. This was one twisted bitch, y'all. We've talked about her in the past, and we may recap her again, because can't ever have enough crazy on the Twisted Southern Horror Queen show, right? What else do we have? We have my serial killer collector's cards. That's right. This is a special edition only from the lineup. Can't get it anywhere else but the Creepy Crate. Each card has a picture of that specific serial killer, his body count, his on the back of it talks about his favorite means of murder and victim count, all kind of really crazy stuff. And let's see, here's a little trinket. I like this right here. This is my personal key to the Bates Motel. Goes on my key ring. And one other little item I was going to share with you. These didn't come in one crate. These are just things that I picked up before the show started that were laying around up here in the Girl Cave. This is my recycled shopping bag that I do use upon occasion. It says we all go a little mad sometimes. It's a psycho bag, right? Every creepy kid needs one of these in their lives, right? You got to take this to Walmart. Recycle. So, like I was saying, go to authorlyngibson.com, click on that icon for the Creepy Crate, check it out. If you like what you see there, make sure that you subscribe and use the code TWISTED when you go to checkout, and that gets you an additional $5 off, because those folks up there really love us here at the Twisted Southern Horror Queen Show. Ronnie and Lori Owens said, I saw the picture of you napping with both puppies. They ain't going nowhere. We are fostering those puppies, Ronnie and Lori. They gonna go somewhere soon. Little Gomez is Precious, and then there's Lucy, which is the girl. Lucy, short for Lucifer. Anyway, one other thing I wanted to run by you, a little shameless self-promotion. Fury is out, y'all. You can find this on Amazon. This is volume 2 of the Adrian trilogy series. Lots of blood and guts. Southern Louisiana vampire lore in here. Yes, we do have that down here. Southern Louisiana's got werewolves and vampires and ghosts and serial killers. You name it, we got it. Probably came from the French Quarter. Probably started sometime around Mardi Gras. But this book right here, if you're a fan of horror, the macabre, the bizarre, or vampire erotica, you need this in your life. Trust me, folks, if you're over the age of 60, don't try the stuff that you read in this book at home. You'll break a hip. Okay, so now that we got the shameless self-promotion out of the way, I've tuned you guys in with the creepy crate. I've alerted Ronnie and Lori Owens that the puppies are not staying. We're going to get on with the show. So you know what that means. Come on, y'all. You know what that means. We've been saying this for a couple of years now. It's time for y'all to dim the lights, lock the doors, and kick those little kids out because you don't want them to get back in. And go fix yourself a tasty adult beverage because we're fixing to get our scary on around here. I'm going to start out tonight with the Cecil Hotel in LA. And trust me, this is not a place where you would want to book your vacation stay unless you're as demented as I am. So the Cecil is a very low budget hotel, and when I say low, I mean like gutter low. This 600 room train wreck is like a crackhead Hilton, right? It does offer at least a roof over these little transients' heads for about $470 a month. And in LA, that kind of tells you what you're looking at. So, yeah, I guess you got the picture. So since its construction in 1927, it has been the site of multiple suicides, multiple murders, several disappearances, and as well a flop house for serial killers. So, yeah, like I was saying, probably not somewhere that you would want to stay. My comments are not scrolling again tonight, so I am going to have to stop periodically and check in and see what you guys are saying. So just imagine this train wreck we were talking about. Well, something really crazy happened there in 2013. It was the site of a very mysterious death, and it was very highly publicized, and you may have actually heard something about it. It started out with the guests there complaining that the water was smelling funky and it tasted foul. Well, when the maintenance staff starts investigating to see what was causing this little issue, it took a while, but they did eventually find a corpse in the water cistern on the roof. At the bottom of that tank were the remains of a Canadian tourist named Elisa Lamb. Is that ringing a bell yet? That name should sound a little bit on the familiar side. Hey, Joe, glad to see you. Let's read. Yes, we're reading. Trend Killer Syndicate is in the house. Good evening, y'all. Okay, I'm glad to see you here getting your scary on with us. So just imagine all these folks that were staying at the Cecil had been bathing in and brushing their teeth and cooking in that same water that Lamb's body had been decomposing in. That's what we call lagniappe here in Louisiana, right? Anyway, this chick Lamb had checked into the hotel on January the 26th, but she wasn't reported missing until February 1st. Now, nobody knows what happened to her to this day, but the closed-circuit TV recordings are in the lift, which is an elevator, and she was acting really crazy. She went in there and she was mashing all the buttons, and the camera shows her looking out of the doors like somebody was stalking her or something. And then towards the end of the recording, she stuck her head out the door, made some kind of gesture, and then she walked out. Well, apparently somebody or something was standing outside the door. But after that, she vanished. And that's, of course, when her body was discovered in the tank on the secured and alarmed rooftop over 2 weeks later. So tell me how the hell she even got up there in the first place without somebody seeing her, right? Well, when you watch the footage, it looks like this chick had consumed some serious drugs. But when the autopsy came back, there were no foreign substances in her body. So maybe she had some mental issues, or maybe she was being harassed by some of the resident ghosts there. Could be either or, right? Let's see. Jeremy's in the house. There's my boy. That's the lead guitar player for Kill J. They are so freaking awesome. You got to check out the Edge Radio US, and you can hear their tunes there. Gavin says he remembers that story about the dead Canadian. Yeah, I bet you do. So anyway, like I said, nothing foreign was found in this chick's body. So we don't know what happened to her, why she wound up dead, or why she wound up in the water cistern, and we probably will never know. But as far as those serial killers that we were talking about, here you go. Let's talk about those. This hotel was home to the Night Stalker, Richard Ramirez. This dude was an American serial killer. He was started out as a burglar, then he turned into a rapist, and then he just decided, hell, if I'm going to do all this, I might as well kill him too. He was on the rampage in 1984 and 1985, a self-proclaimed Satanist that terrorized LA before they finally caught the dude. He wound up killing over 13 people that we know of. He was a little bit different than most serial killers, though, because he didn't really seem to have a preference for his means of killing, meaning which weapon, or if he strangled, shot, stabbed, because he did a little bit of everything. I guess maybe he liked to experiment some. And he wasn't terribly picky about the type of victim he chose, and that's really kind of off the wall for any serial killer. The only common thread he had was that all of his victims were female, but they ranged in ages from 9 years old all the way up until their mid-70s. And another common thread that he had was if he killed somebody, it was brutal as hell. He would beat somebody's face in with a tire iron, or stab them 101 times, or, you know, just really bizarre stuff. And it wasn't ever just shoot somebody, walk away, or strangle them. Or the one chick, he decided he was going to cut her throat. He gashed her so hard that it damn near decapitated her. So yeah, he was a little bit into excess. Well, this dude was living on the top floor of the Cecil Hotel in a $14 a night room while he slaughtered these 13 victims. Now, it was pretty convenient for him because back in the day, they didn't really have cameras or security or anything like that. So this dude would just dump his bloody clothes in the dumpster at the end of the evening, and he'd go in through the rear entrance of the hotel. Well, eventually, like I said, they did catch this sick freak, and he was sentenced to death in the gas chamber in 1989. After he received his sentence, he showed absolutely no remorse. In fact, his last statement was, "Big deal. Death was always going to go with the territory. See you in Disneyland." I think he might have had some issues. Maybe just one or two, right? So yeah, keep that shit in mind when you book your summer vacation with the kids, right? Then there was another serial killer, and his name was Jack Unterweger, and I'm probably saying that way wrong. But this dude stayed in the hotel in 1991 for 5 or 6 weeks, and during that time, he had a thing for murdering hookers. I don't know what the deal was, but he would have the hookers enter his room via a fire escape for a measly $30. So these must have been some really desperate / butt ugly hookers that were willing to climb up a fire escape in the first place, but then turn a trick for $30. So anyway, all this stuff went down after the dude had been released from jail in Australia for similar kind of murders. In Australia, they decided they would let this freak out as an example of the successful rehabilitation program that they had there. Anyway, after that, he was hired by this Australian magazine to be a crime writer in LA. So this disturbed little individual is believed to be paying homage to his subject, Richard Ramirez, when he beat and sexually assaulted and then strangled women with their own bra straps. So $30 hookers that he's paying to climb up a fire escape actually had the money to wear bras. Just odd to me. Very, very odd. So what about the suicides and the murders there, right? Well, those horrors started way back in the beginning of the Great Depression. In 1929, which if you remember, this joint was built in 27, so it went 2 years unscathed before all the shit starts hitting the fan, right? Well, 29, this 33-year-old woman was taken to the hospital after she'd been wandering around the hotel for 3 or 4 days, and she's acting like she lost her damn mind. According to reports, she was distraught over the sudden death of her husband, and she actually tried to kill herself with prescribed barbiturates. It was like the answer for Valium and Lexapro back in the day. Anyway, she failed, but after that, it became known as a suicide hotspot there at the Cecil. So the first successful suicide attempt was documented only a few weeks later when this 46-year-old dude there ODs deliberately on poison. The following year, there was a 25-year-old dude that shot himself in his hotel room. And after that, there was a young truck driver that was fatally pinned against the hotel wall outside by a big delivery truck. Then, in 1934, another dude took his life there. And another one after that. He was a Marine fireman named Roy Thompson who had been at the Cecil for several weeks. He was found dead on the skylight of the building next door after apparently he jumped from his hotel room. Oh, and I'm not finished there because Pauline Otten, who was 27 years old, was herself to her death from off of her 9th floor window after she was in an argument with her husband. Well, she lands on a pedestrian named George Gianni, who was 65 years old, and that poor bastard was killed on impact. Oh, and then there was this other chick, too. Her name was Helen Gurney. She jumped from the 7th floor window, and her body landed on the hotel marquee right over the heads of some tourists as they were walking by. And then check this out. In 1947, Elizabeth Short, nicknamed the Black Dahlia, was allegedly seen at the Cecil bar right before she was found murdered. So another unsolved murder there was in 1964. This chick they called the Pigeon Woman, but her name was Goldie Osgood. And she kind of had a thing for feeding the birds in a nearby square. Well, she was found dead in her room. She'd been stabbed, strangled, and raped. And then, of course, her room was ransacked. If it was 1984 instead of 1964, I think we could have pinned that one on Richard Ramirez, right? Now, those deaths are just a few of the tragedies that actually went down there at the Cecil. But trust me, there are a whole lot more other bizarre stories to be told, like this one dude who was accused of killing his girlfriend in Huntington Beach. He was arrested at the Cecil in 1988. And then in 1995, a murder suspect named Eric Reed was found at the hotel after he broke out of jail. So, yeah, as I was saying, unless you're very demented, not a place you'd care to book. But I think we'll spend a little bit of time on this joint here in a later episode because of all the stuff that went down there. You know, this place has just got to be crawling with ghosts, right? Lots of trauma and drama there. Gavin says a crazy, insane womanizer. You got to be talking about Ramirez, right? Yeah, he had some issues. And, you know, I was looking at his Wikipedia page. The tragic thing about a lot of these serial killers, not all, but a lot of them, they were fairly good-looking men. And, of course, most of them, especially the successful ones, were highly intelligent. So, you know, you just kind of got to scratch your head and go, why the hell weren't they a lawyer or a doctor or something? It just doesn't make sense. I guess you're just sometimes born into it. So next up, we're going to talk about another hotel, but I bet you haven't heard of this one. This is the Driskill Hotel in Austin, Texas. Ronnie and Lori Owens, you guys may want to check this one out. So it's got some serious unexplained phenomena right there in that little area. Now, the Driskill opened in 1886 on the 20th of December, and it was considered to be the Hotel of Dreams. It was like a Disney World, I guess. It was built by this popular rancher named Jesse Lincoln Driskill. And Driskill had actually bought that piece of ground in 1885 for less than $8,000. But by the time the hotel was finished, it ended up costing him over $400,000. Now in 1886, man, that was a ton of money. That would be millions and millions and millions of dollars today. Damn near equivalent to the national debt, I would assume. So anyway, you know that it had to be bad to the bone fancy, right? It had all the state-of-the-art stuff that it could possibly have in it for 1886. So this luxury hotel, the Driskill, drew only the most famous and elite individuals in the region. From politicians to celebrities, the Driskill had them all. And old man Driskill just absolutely loved his hotel and the status, of course, that it had elevated him to. So it was said and known, very well known throughout the staff and his family, that he loved the place so much that he decided he was going to stick around. And a lot of the staff and family and regular visitors there knew him, and they swear that they felt his presence in the hotel well after he'd been laid to rest. Folks will tell you that he makes his presence known by the scent of his cigar smoke, and he's known to show up in some of the guests' rooms, particularly the female guests. But old man Driskill isn't the only ghost that hangs out around there. There's this room, number 525, that's said to be the most haunted in the entire hotel. The story with this room is truly tragic. It's known as the room of the suicide brides. The legend says that two young women who were on their honeymoon in the hotel killed themselves in the bathroom of room 525. But both of the deaths occurred 20 years apart to the day. When it happened the second time, the hotel staff blocked off the bathroom area and then closed off the room completely. But when the reconstruction efforts started in 1998, the room was reopened, and that's when the shit hit the fan, y'all. No guest that stayed in room 525 went without having some kind of paranormal experience or encounter after that. From flickering lights to faucets turning on or off, disembodied sobbing, and actual encounters with spirits of women in wedding dresses, folks have left that room with some serious stories to take home with them. And if you ask me, that's one of the best kind of souvenirs there are, is to go home with a haunted experience. Jason, nice to see you in the house tonight. Rita Langford's in the house. And there's my boy, Freddie. Very, very talented anime artist, and he is up and coming, definitely making appearances at cons left and right. That's my boy. I'm very proud of you, Freddie. Also, tell my girl, Brandy, that I'm thinking about her. She's in my thoughts and prayers, of course. So, secondly, there was a chick that committed suicide there on the 4th floor of the Driskill. Now, the reason for her fatal decision has been lost to history, but a lot of folks that have stayed there, along with the hotel staff, have spotted this woman out of the corner of their eye. And, of course, when they turn to acknowledge her, she vanishes into thin air. There are also reports that you can hear this female voice whispering, and some folks claim that they've actually heard her crying as they're walking down the hallway there. There's another well-documented story about a young girl named Samantha Houston. If you've heard of the Driskill at all, this is likely the ghost story that you've heard there. Samantha was the daughter of a very popular senator back in the day. And sometime in 1887, when the senator and his family were visiting, the little girl was chasing her ball down the grand staircase there. And of course, she tripped and fell to her death. Now, this incident was actually the first recording of paranormal activity at the Driskill Hotel. Not a week after she died, she was spotted chasing her ball down the staircase again, but she would always vanish right when she hit the spot where she fell to her death. Now, as a tribute to the little girl, the hotel owner commissioned an artist, probably just as talented as my boy Freddie there, to paint a portrait of Samantha, and it's hanging there at the staircase today. You can see her. She's standing there with a sweet little smile on her face. She's holding a bunch of flowers and a letter for some reason. I have no idea what that's all about. But visitors claim that when they stand there and they look at the painting, that they'll become dizzy or nauseous. And some folks will even report feeling a strange sensation of being lifted off the ground. A lot of people think that that's Samantha trying to communicate through the painting. And if you stand there and stare at her long enough, her expression supposedly changes. People believe that they can hear her giggling through the halls of the hotel, and of course they can hear the sound of that bouncing ball on the stairs. Let's scroll down and see who I've missed out on so far. Freddie's got my website up there. Freddie, you're freaking awesome. There's one more experience that went down there that I want to tell you guys about, because you'll go, oh my God, really? Annie Lennox was on tour there. If you remember back in the 80s, I know I'm old, Annie was the lead singer for the Eurythmics. Now, she stayed at the Driskill while she was on tour there. So Annie was having trouble deciding what she was going to wear on stage that night, and she got it down to 2 outfits. So she lays those 2 outfits out on her bed, and she goes to the bathroom, takes a shower, and start getting ready. And when she comes out of the bathroom, somebody had made her mind up for her and left one of the outfits laying on the bed, and the other one had been hung back up in the closet. I thought that was really cool. So now we're going to shift gears just a little bit, and we're going to talk about some cursed relics, or at least one really crazy one. I had never heard this story until I ran across it a couple weeks ago. This is the screaming skull of Burton Agnes Hall. If you're from England, which of course I ain't, I'm from here in southeastern Louisiana, home of the Rougarou. But if you're from England, you have at least heard of Burton Agnes Hall. It's an Elizabethan manor house that pretty much dominates the entire village of Burton Agnes. And that's somewhere near East Yorkshire, if that helps anybody. Doesn't help me. I didn't even Google Maps it. But what you may not know is that trapped somewhere behind the walls of this old historic manor house is said to be a possessed human skull, along with the ghost of a headless woman known as Ode Nancy. So let's talk about the legend behind this madness right here, right? So somewhere between 1601 and 1610, Sir Henry Griffith financed the construction of what he intended to be the most elaborate manor house in East Riding of Yorkshire. So Sir Henry had 3 daughters, and the youngest one was named Anne Griffith. Well, initially Anne would hang out around the manor while it was being built, and she was kind of awestruck by watching the building take place, and in the meanwhile, she was somehow growing obsessed with it. So one day after she left the construction site, she was attacked by some thieves in a nearby park, and they hit her over the head with a stick before they hauled ass from the scene. Well, some of the villagers found her, and they took her back to her sisters to be taken care of, but it was pretty much too late by that point. So the girl knew that she was going to die, and she made one last wish. Here are her recorded last words. Sisters, never shall I sleep peacefully in my grave in the churchyard unless I, or part of me at least, remain here in our beautiful home as long as it lasts. Promise me this, dear sisters, that when I am dead, my head shall be taken from my body and preserved within these walls. Here let it forever remain, and on no account be removed. And understand and make it known to those who in the future shall become possessors of the house, that if they should disobey this, my last injunction, My spirit shall, if so able and so permitted, make such a disturbance within its walls, so as to render it uninhabitable for others so long as my head is removed from its home. This chick was twisted as hell, right? Well, anyway, to keep the peace, her sisters agreed, but when it actually came down to it, they failed to keep the promise because neither one of them could stomach the thought of mutilating their sister's corpse. So they went ahead and they had her buried at Burton Agnes Church. Well, after that, the manor house started having some issues, and they were hearing moaning and weird sounds all over the place. It got bad enough to where the servants refused to work there anymore. They couldn't even keep the freaking staff there. So the sisters got tired of being plagued by these hauntings. Well, they decided they were going to go ahead and dig up Anne's corpse and do what they had promised in the first place. So they dig the chick up and they cut her head off and they take her skull back to the manor, and everything was at peace then. But that shit didn't last. One day, this skeptical maid decided she was tired of having to look at this freaking skull every day. So while nobody was looking, she picks it up and she wraps it in a piece of cloth and she throws it into a passing wagon that just happened to be full of manure. Probably the way wrong move at that point in time. Because then something really crazy happened. The horses started freaking out. They just started like shaking and trembling, and it became impossible to move the wagon. The driver even tried everything, but it was like the wheels were just stuck in the ground there. Now, this maid's standing there at the window watching all of this go down, and eventually she figures out that she better own up to what she had done and go carry her ass back out there and get the skull out of the manure, clean it up, and put it back where she found it. Now, you'd think that one time would have been enough, but not so much. Years later, another owner, who was a relative of Sir Henry, decided he was going to bury the skull in the yard. Well, again, the halls of the manor start echoing with these wails and these cries. So eventually, the dude goes back out there and he digs up the skull and cleans it off and puts it back where he found it. Well, later on, another relative that was living in the manor decided that they were tired of looking at this freaking skull every day, too. So he has it bricked up in a wall there. So it's kind of the best of both worlds. It was there forever. Nobody's got to look at it again, and nobody will ever be able to remove it again. But now, nobody knows where the skull is inside the manor. There is a room where a portrait of Anne hangs, and some really strange stuff goes down in this room. This one dude, his name was John Biltons. He came to visit the manor at some point, and he was taken to the room where this portrait of Anne was hanging, and he was supposed to stay there for the night. So this dude's walking around, he's checking out the room, and he's holding this candle out in front of the portrait while he's looking at it. Well, all of a sudden, this candle gets blown out. He tries every way he can think to relight this candle, but it wasn't happening. Now, later the same night, he was woken by these weird and violent noises in the room. And it was then that he went to haul ass from the room, but before he could reach the door, he was cut off by the specter of a headless woman who was in between the doorway and the hall. So since then, a lot of folks have had similar experiences to this dude, and a lot of them have encountered that same headless apparition as well. So, hey, that may be a place to check out if you're in England anytime soon. Now, next up, I got a few of these lined up. We're going to talk about some cursed gems. Now, the first one I'm sure you guys have probably heard about. This bad boy is an impressive 45.52 carats, and that's enough to make anybody drool right there. But it's not a good idea to have it in your possession because it's said to be cursed as hell. Now, on September 11th, 1792, the Hope Diamond was stolen from the house that stored the crown jewels. It's a pretty fascinating little bauble, particularly if you are the type of person who is impressed with something along those lines. But this curse actually began with this dude named Tavernier Blue. Now, he found this big diamond. It was actually a big blue diamond, what they were calling it. and it's where the Hope Diamond came from. This diamond was bigger than the Hope Diamond. The Hope Diamond was actually cut out of it along with several other gems as well. Now the legend goes like this. John Baptiste Tavernier stole this 115 carat blue diamond from out of a Hindu statue where it was serving as one of the eyes. Now, when these Hindu priests discovered it was missing, they were freaking pissed. So they put a curse on this sucker, and whoever was in possession of that gem, they were going to have a shitstorm to go through after that. Now today that curse is said to still be active, so they must have really put something on that back then in the day. That was a very long time ago. Anyway, let's talk about what has happened to some of these poor bastards that own this gem. So first off, of course, the dude that stole it, Jean Baptiste Tavernier, the story goes that he came down with some kind of raging fever after he stole the diamond, and they say after he died, his body was ravaged by wolves. Then there was King Louis the 14th. Now, he had actually bought the stone from Tavernier, and he had it recut in 1673. It was then known, of course, as the Blue Diamond of the Crown, or the French Blue. Well, old King Louis died of gangrene, and all of his legitimate children died in childhood except for one of them. Then came Nicholas Fouquet, who was employed by King Louis. Well, this dude made the mistake of wearing the diamond for a special occasion, and shortly thereafter, he fell out of favor with the king, and he was banished from France. The king then changed his sentence to life imprisonment, so Fouquet spent 15 years in the dungeons. Now, some folks say that this dude is actually the man behind the Iron Mask, that's where that story came from, but we don't really know for sure if that's fact or not. And then the next two lucky winners were Louis and Marie Antoinette. So Louis inherited the French blue and Marie Antoinette wore it, and I think we all know where that went, right? After those two was Marie Louise, which was a princess, and she was a member of Marie Antoinette's court, and of course her closest confidant. Well, that tramp got killed by a mob. They actually hit the chick with a hammer, decapitated her, stripped her, disemboweled her, among other things. Then her head was impaled on a spike, and it was put on display in front of Marie Antoinette's old prison window. Then came William Fels. Now, this dude was a Dutch jeweler who recut the diamond again. I wouldn't have done that, no. But his son actually wound up murdering him, and then he killed himself. Now, after William was Simon Mechanards, and he was a Greek merchant who owned the diamond, and his crazy got loose one day, and he drove his car over a cliff, and he killed himself, his wife, and his kid. Then there was this chick named Evelyn Walsh McLean. Now, this hooker was a spoiled heiress who lived a very charmed life, and she bought the Hope Diamond. So she flaunted this diamond all over the place, and there's even stories about her hooking it on her dog's collar and letting the dog walk all around the apartment with this massive diamond on its collar. But of course, wearing that diamond came with a very steep price. Her first mother-in-law died, her son died at the age of 9, her husband left her for another woman and later died in a mental hospital. Her daughter died of a drug overdose in 25, and she eventually had to sell her newspaper, the Washington Post, and she died owing huge debts. Now, Evelyn's surviving kids sold the diamond to Harry Winston 9 years later. Winston mailed this gem to the Smithsonian for $2.44 in postage and $155 in insurance. The poor bastard that delivered the gem was named James Todd. And apparently a few days later, his leg was crushed in a truck accident. And shortly after that, he suffered a head injury in a separate accident, and then his house burned down. So most of us had already heard that there were some serious curses that went along with the Hope Diamond, but Never really had it broke down as to what happened to who and all that kind of crazy stuff. And that was some, that was pretty brutal. Hey, there's my girl Jackie. That's my cousin in Pearl River County, Mississippi. Now, we talked about the Hope Diamond, but there's actually another diamond out there. It's called the Koh-i-Noor diamond, which was one of the most famous diamonds in the world. And it was actually first mentioned in 1306 when it was taken from King Malwa. Now, this rock had been in the king's family for centuries. It was a 186 karat oval cut white diamond, which was basically the size of an egg. The Koh-i-Noor diamond belonged to various Indian and Persian rulers, but it became part of the crown jewels of England when Queen Victoria was named Empress of India. Now, today the Koh-i-Noor weighs 108.9 carats, and it's kept in the Tower of London. But in 1739, Nadir Shah, which was the king of Persia, invaded India, and he was said to refer to the diamond as the Mountain of Light. Now, the Persian or Arabic words for Mountain of Light were Koh-i-Noor. So the value of this magnificent diamond actually symbolized the entire power of an empire. But the curse still dates back to Hindu texts around the time of 1306 when it was first documented. Now, the curse of the Koh-i-Noor diamond reads, "He who owns this diamond will own the world, but will also know all of its misfortunes. Only God or a woman can wear it without impunity." So the history and the lives of rulers that owned the Koh-i-Noor diamond were filled with violence and murders and mutilations and tortures and treachery. And the British royal families were obviously aware of the curse from the reign of Queen Victoria when it came into her possession. So that's why it's always gone to the wife of the male heir to the throne. So throughout history, it was passed from one dynasty to the next, and it seems that the curse takes about 20 years to take effect after it's owned by someone. So a lot of the royals that owned the gem were overthrown and died some pretty horrific deaths. Now, there's one other gem that we're going to talk about. Never heard of this one either. This one's kind of new to me. There's the curse of the purple sapphire of Delhi. Now, the earliest records of the Delhi purple sapphire came from India, again, where it was looted from the Temple of India during a horrific Indian mutiny in 1857. Ironically, this temple was devoted to a Hindu god of war and weather, and that, of course, is where the curse began. Yet here it is, another jewel that was stolen from a statue of an ancient god. When the hell do you think folks would ever learn to don't do that? So after that, the sapphire was taken to England by Colonel W. Ferris William, who was a Bengal cavalryman. And trust me, this dude didn't get very far before he regretted having anything to do with this freaking sapphire. So just after he gets back to England, the entire Ferris family starts having some serious health and financial issues. And the family starts figuring out that the shit hit the fan right after dear old dad bought this gem home with him. But by then it was too late, and they were already poverty-stricken and pretty well sickly. So the stone was given to a family friend to hold on to for a while for him. Well, this dude automatically starts having problems of his own, and a very short while later, he winds up killing himself while he's still in possession of the stone. Then the next unfortunate soul that owned the gem was an author named Edward Heron Allen, and that was in 1890. Now, this dude is immediately stricken by a series of misfortunes and bad luck. And he's actually a very well-educated and respected man who'd been successful in a number of fields. And he wasn't somebody who bought into mythology or superstition. But he soon became adamant that this sapphire was cursed. So he actually went as far as to giving the stone away to friends of his twice. Both of those friends bought it back after their lives started turning to shit too. So the dude is desperate to get rid of this sapphire, and he figures out he's got a plan. So he throws it into the dark and dirty Regent's Canal, but 3 months later, it's found by a dredger, and the dredger sells it to a jeweler. Well, the jeweler at that point recognizes the stone, and he returns it to the author, who, needless to say, was not thrilled to get it back. So in 1904, after the birth of his first daughter, he seals this gem inside of a box, and he ships it to his bankers with a set of instructions for it to be locked away until after he's dead. Now, at that point, it was to be donated to the Natural History Museum under the condition that the box was not to be opened until 3 years after he'd been put in the ground, and that under no circumstances was his daughter to ever touch or own this gem. So in 1943, after he died, the Natural History Museum received this box containing the gem, and as per instructions, they put it aside. Well, sometime later, long after the box had been opened, a note was found, and of course it had the details of the unfortunate history that was attached to this stone. Heron ended his note with this warning. It said, "Whoever shall then open it shall first read out this warning, and then do as he pleases with the jewel. My advice to him or her is to cast it into the sea." So is this curse still active? Well, I would say so. In 2004, the gem was in the possession of John Whitaker. Now, Whitaker was a member of the Natural History Museum, and he was tasked with transporting the purple sapphire to the Heron Allen Society for this major event. Well, on his way there, Mr. Whitaker and his wife get caught up in some wild-ass electrical storm. They wind up skidding off the side of the road, and where they wind up trapped in their car. Mr. Whitaker said that this was one of the most horrific experiences in his entire life. Well, after that, they sent him to transport the sapphire a second time, during which then he fell violently ill. Then there was a third time. Why in the hell was there a third time to begin with? Well, the dude goes to leave. He's got the gem all boxed up, and all of a sudden he collapses on the floor having these massive pains, and he winds up passing a kidney stone that he didn't even know he had. So I'm guessing after that, Mr. Whitaker told the museum to kiss his royal ass the next time they asked him to take this sapphire somewhere, right? Gavin said he would love to hold the Hope Diamond. I wouldn't touch that sucker with a 10-foot stick. Wayla said, what did Wayla say about the diamond? It's not feeding down to let me see. Oh, she said she don't need that diamond. Me either, baby. Jamie Vaccaro is also in the house. Hello, my sweetness. And there's my boy Brandon Vale from Texas. Glad to see you hanging out with me tonight. He says, hey, sweetheart. He thinks I'm a sweetheart. He doesn't know. So one more curse for the evening, but it's not a gem. Now, we all know about the archaeologist Howard Carter that discovered King Tut's tomb in 1922. And that's when Egypt became the place for the world's elite to visit. Well, Sir Alexander Seton, which they called him Sandy, was the 10th Baronet of Abercorn, and he and his wife Zayla decided they were going to travel from Edinburgh to Cairo in 1936. Well, this trip started a series of events that convinced him that he and his family was cursed. Well, trust me, they asked for it. So in his memoirs, Sir Alexander recounts that during their visit to Egypt, everything was cool until they decided to take a tour of the newly opened tomb that lay in the shadow of the pyramids. Well, he said that he had a bad feeling that came over him the second that he walked into the tomb. As a matter of fact, his exact words were, I had a feeling in my bones that something was going to happen over this, and it was only with the greatest of difficulty that Zayla cajoled me into going with her. In other words, the wife made him do it, right? It's always us. Well, I wished earnestly to God that we had not gone, he ends his memoir. Now, in this, he describes how they were led down 30 roughly hewn rock steps, and then their guide, Abdul, leads them to this stone slab where the remains of a female skeleton are just kind of laying there uncovered. And he noted that her skull and her leg bones were pretty clearly visible, but a few of her ribs were missing. However, her spine was still intact, and he found that kind of cool. Well, when they go to leave, he bows his head and he has a brief moment of prayer while his fascinated wife kind of hung back to take one last look at the skeleton. What he didn't know was that while he was praying, Zayla took a bone from the skeleton and stuck it in her pocket. Later at dinner that evening, she confesses to what she did. So she busts up with this bone that she had stolen, and they start checking it out. And it's kind of a heart-shaped bone, at which at that point Sir Alexander announced that it looked like something that had, and he was just kind of disgusted by it. So he actually winds up forgetting about the bone until they get back to Edinburgh. Well, Zayla's unpacking everything, and she unpacks the bone, and she decides she's going to display it in a glass clock case in their drawing room. And that's when the curse rears its ugly head. Within minutes of the bone being set up in the drawing room, a grouping of ceiling panels come crashing down and almost hit them. Well, over the next few weeks, the family's sleep was disturbed by sounds of bumps and bangs and thuds. And during that time, they actually had a house guest. It was a cousin of theirs that had come to visit. And one evening, he's walking down the hall past the drawing room, and he sees what he describes as a ghostly woman dressed in strange clothes float by him. So other guests start coming into the house, and Zayla, of course, is wanting to show off her little token from Cairo, and they start seeing this strange little apparition floating around there as well. Well, after that, it was pretty much on in that house. Chairs started being thrown around, and the glass case that the bone was being displayed in actually shattered, and it kind of blew up from what they explained. The legs on the tables that the bone was sitting on actually split in half and even collapsed. Now, by this time, the household was in a major uproar, and Sir Alexander locked the drawing room door and starts patrolling the house. Now, nothing happened that night, so he went to bed. Well, a few hours later, his wife woke him up, and she's screaming about somebody had to have broken in the house. So he grabs his gun and he heads downstairs, and he meets his daughter's nanny on the stairs, and this chick was in freaking hysterics. She's blubbering about something that was moving around in the drawing room. So he goes back upstairs for his keys, and when he and Zayla unlocked the drawing room door, they discovered mass chaos. Everything had been flung all over the place. There were chairs and bookshelves everywhere, and books and papers, everything just all over the floor. But the door was still locked, and he was the only one with a key. So he goes and he checks the windows, and he finds all of those locked and secured. Well, now he's convinced that they had acquired a poltergeist, and he tells his wife that he's going to destroy that bone. Well, she pitches a bitch fit, and she forbids him to touch his bone. This caused a serious and prolonged fight in between the two of them. So this reporter from the Express catches a wind of what's going on in this house, and he starts to hound Sir Alexander for answers. Well, of course, Sir Alexander refuses to comment because he's already got all of his friends and family and neighbors coming to check the place out. The last thing he needs is the freaking press there, right? Well, later on, this same reporter requested to borrow the bone. The dude actually allowed him to take it. So the Express reporter brought the bone back without incident, but later after that, he was involved in a serious car accident, and he was damn near killed. Now, the activity calmed down for a little while until one night when they had returned from this social engagement. The nanny meets him at the door again, and she's all freaked the hell out. She said she'd been hearing all these loud noises in the drawing room all night long, and then she heard glass shattering, but she wasn't going in there to check nothing out. She didn't get paid that kind of money. So they go to check out the drawing room, and when the door was open, they found that everything was undisturbed with the exception of the table that the bone was sitting on. The table was laid over on its side, and the bone had hit the floor and shattered. So the reporter, or a reporter from the Scottish Daily Mail, was called in to take pictures of it. Well, he, like the first reporter, borrowed the bone, but the next day he returned it because he said he had become seriously ill. So the family prayed and peace returned to the house briefly, and then on Boxing Day they invited over 100 guests for dinner. Well, Zayla and her friend had sat there and they put the pieces of the bone back together and they glued it in place, and it was back on display in the drawing room. Well, as these guests are being served cocktails in an adjoining room, the conversation, of course, inevitably turns to the bone. Well, at that very moment, the table that the bone was sitting on hurls itself violently across the room, hitting the opposite wall and shattering. Needless to say, the party was pretty much over at that point. So the American papers then picked up on the story after that. And again, Sir Alexander was hounded. The family received thousands of letters from concerned citizens, and Howard Carter, who had actually made the initial Tutankhamun find, penned one of those letters. And he stated that sometimes inexplicable things could happen and would continue to happen. Sir Alexander determined now that he was going to request a Roman Catholic to come in and do something with the hell that's going on in this house. So he's going to have him exorcise the bone. And of course he had to do this while Zayla wasn't at home. Well, once the bone was blessed, he decided that that wasn't quite enough, so he destroyed it by burning it. And years later, he stated that the piece did return to his house, but Zayla never forgave him for that. And of course, their marriage pretty much disintegrated after he did what she told him he couldn't do. There's Glenn Harrison. That is my boy from Hardcore Paranormal. Ronnie and Lori said, Lynn, if you haven't heard, check out the story of South San Antonio near San Juan Mission. Ghost children push cars off the train tracks. Actually, I've done a story on that, and it's pretty freaking cool. There were some experiments done on that, Ronnie and Lori, and one of those experiments was the people put talcum powder on their fenders and the back bumper of their car, and they would sit there at the train tracks with the car in neutral, of course, not running, and the cars would be pushed over the tracks. And they went back with cameras to document what had happened. And as they're filming and taking photos, there are little bitty handprints in the powder that they had put on the cars. So yeah, pretty cool little story there. And I think actually how that originated was that it was a busload of students that they were on their way home from school. The bus stalled on the tracks, and a train came and hit it and killed pretty much everybody that was on, or that was in the bus. And that's where the story originated. Actually, there's a very cool picture, and I may still have it in my files somewhere, of a ghost child that someone took a picture of right there in that intersection. It's a little girl, and you can see her very vividly. She's holding a teddy bear. So it's a pretty cool little picture. I'll see one day if I can find that, and I'll shoot that over there to you. All right, so that's pretty much a wrap for me. I want to thank all you guys for hanging out with me and getting all your scary on here, right here with the Twisted Southern Horror Queen, coming to you live from southern Louisiana under a full moon. At least I think it's a full moon out there. But in the meanwhile, if you need to get your creepy on before next Tuesday, you can always go to authorlyngibson.com, where you can check out my blogs and my books and pictures from past events. And of course, check out the Creepy Crate. Click on that icon, go to their site, look and see some of the crazy stuff that's been in some of these past crates. And they're giving you a few little hints about what's going to be in the next one, which I believe is going to ship next week. As soon as I have my new Creepy Crate in my hands, I will be happy to do a live unveiling for you guys so y'all can see what I got. And also the far right tab at authorlyngibson.com. Go and check out The Edge Radio US. There's some badass tunes there, and jam with us. Download the free Android app. Also, we just hit Soundgarden, so you can stream us from any kind of device, phone, laptop, iPad, doesn't matter anymore. Doesn't have to be Android. You can stream us live from freaking anywhere. And also another hurdle, I guess, our milestone that we've passed. 89 countries are streaming The Edge Radio US. That's right, folks, rocking out with The Edge all over the freaking world. It's awesome. We love it. You keep it creepy too, Gavin. All right, folks, thanks again for joining me, and hopefully I'll see all you guys back here next week, Tuesday evening, 7 Central and 8 Eastern. In the meanwhile, y'all keep it creepy, because you know I will.